ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णकरुणासिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनित नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्यनाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Welcome. So today we are going to start chapter 4, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Now before we start the chapter, we can go through a quick recap of what we have studied. very briefly. As we see in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna came to the battlefield of Kurukshetra and he became deluded, grief-stricken, and was lamenting. Now he cannot convince himself to fight against his relatives and teachers, especially Bhishma Deva, Dronacharya, etc. Then we see, understanding his position, he surrenders to Krishna and takes the position of a disciple. And then Bhagavan states the nature of the soul, that is Atma Tattva. He says the importance of tolerance, reminds him his duties as a Kshatriya, describes Buddhi Yoga or the transcendental quality of activities, spiritual steadfastness, and the nature of a Sthita Prajna person, that is a man of steady wisdom. And then we see Bhagavan explains more elaborately how to work in this world. That is the art of action, remaining detached to the fruits of activities. And in this connection, he cites the example of King Janaka, etc., who were enlightened and devoted souls. Now, then he states his own example. As we know, he is absolutely free from all material contamination, but working in this material world as an ordinary kingly person. And by these examples, he categorically points out the responsibility of leading personalities of the society. And then Bhagavan teaches how to conquer the prime eternal enemy of the jivas, which is the root cause of material bondage. We see in the end of chapter 3. So, after the self-destructive desires are controlled, that is, after conquering the inner enemies, now it is the time for complete self-realization. So, that is chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge or Jnana Yoga. Okay, so first we will chant the 3 shlokas, 1, 2 and 3, and then we will discuss a little bit. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Imam vivasvate yogam proktavanahamavyayam vivasvana manave praha manurikshvakave bravit. Shri Bhagavanuvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Imam, this, vivasvate, unto the Sun God, yogam, the science of one's relationship to the Supreme, proktavan, instructed, aham, I, avyayam, imperishable, vivasvan, the Sun God's name, manave, unto the Father of mankind, of the name Vivasvata, praha, told, manuhu, the Father of mankind, ikshvakave, unto King Ikshvaku, abravit, said. Translation. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the Sun God Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Text 2. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduho sakalineha mahata yoganashtah parantapa. Evam, thus, parampara, by disciplic succession. Praptam received imam, this science, Raja Rishayah, the saintly kings, Viduhu understood, Saha, that knowledge, Kalena, in the course of time, Iha, in this world, Mahata, great, Yogaha, the science of one's relationship with the Supreme, Nashtaha, scattered, Paramtapa. O the subduer of the enemies. Translation. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. 3. Saevayam maya tedya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam yetaduttamam. Saha, the same. Eva, certainly. Ayam, this. Maya, by me. Te, unto you. Adya, today. Yogaha, the science of yoga. Proktaha, spoken. Puratanaha, very old. Bhaktaha, devotee. Asi, you are. Me, mine. Sakha, friend. Cha, also. Iti, therefore. Rahasyam, mystery. He, certainly. Etat, this. Uttamam, transcendental. Translation. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Okay, thank you. So we see that in these 3 verses, Bhagavan is giving an introduction of the knowledge that he is going to impart to Arjuna. First we see the need of the knowledge, and then we see the nature of the knowledge, and then we see the qualification of the recipient of this knowledge. So, need and nature of the knowledge we will discuss first. We see that our very existence and facilities that we receive in this world, all are gifted by the Lord. We receive sunlight, we receive water, we receive different kind of food, crops, fruits, etc. And then the most important thing, the air, without which we cannot survive at all. So we see, and now there is a need for a manual for a better living that also the Bhagavan is giving to us. Now, the knowledge, as Bhagavan is saying here, yogo nashtaha, that is the knowledge to establish the connection with the absolute reality, is lost. And we see this information, this knowledge particularly is not informational like the other mundane knowledge that we receive in our life, but it is transformational. And it gives us a better sense of the world and helps us to live better. Now, as we see in the end of chapter 18, Arjuna is transformed. Initially, he was talking like irresponsible person when he was lamenting. But we see at the end, there is a complete transformation. So this knowledge can actually realign and redirect our lives. So we see the importance of understanding this science of Bhagavad Gita, especially by the administrative class. Through Arjuna, we understand this. Now, this spiritual knowledge we see passes down through parampara, as Bhagavan saying, evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu. In verse 2, we see. So this, in this material world also, we see that the material wealth also passed on very carefully to the next generation. So Bhagavan is saying that the sun god, who is known as Vivaswan in this millennium, he told this knowledge initially to Vivaswan. And then Vivaswan transferred this knowledge to Manu, the father of mankind. And the present Manu is named Shraddha Deva, and he is the seventh in line. He is the seventh in line. And then he spoke this knowledge to Maharaja Ikshvaku, his son, and who is the forefather of Raghu dynasty, we see, in which Lord Ramachandra appeared. So now Bhagavan is going to speak again to Arjuna about 5,160 years ago. So Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the Supreme Lord, and therefore it is apaurushaya, that is superhuman, and to be considered as good as the Vedas. And that is why we know it is also known as Gita Upanishad. So like the Vedic instructions, Bhagavad Gita should also be accepted as it is spoken by the Lord without any mundane interpretation. Now we see Bhagavan is also stating the importance of this knowledge. And as we see, he is praising the science of yoga as it is profoundly secret and can transform our lives. As he is saying that rahasyam hetad uttamam. Etat means this, rahasyam means mystery, and uttamam, that is transcendental. So this transcendental mystery I am going to tell you, which was known to the great Raja Rishis, like Nimi, King Janaka, etc. So Bhagavan is saying that they all were liberated by the performance of this yoga, because they knew this. Evam parampara praptam rajarshayo viduhu. So the saintly kings knew this, understood this science of yoga. So now we know that Rishi means Rish plus in, or Drish plus in, that is who has moved to the truth or has seen or realized the truth. He is a Rishi. And Raja Rishi means the saintly kings or the kingly sages, king sages. So we see that outwardly they were rulers and inwardly sages. So they were all great rulers of the worlds, of the world, but inwardly they were sages. Now in this world we find two kinds of wise people. One kind, they are with answers. They are having all the answers of the questions we ask generally. And the other, who are the answers themselves by the way of their deeds. So these Rajarishis were the second kind of people. Now we see what is the effect of this knowledge. If we understand also, then what? Here also there are two possibilities. The first is renouncing the material world, that is becoming sannyasis. And the second is devotional service to the Lord or service in devotional mode, which is possible to execute by every person, whether he is a monk or a householder. Now we see that Bhagavad Gita never encourages renunciation and living the life of a mendicant, as we usually understand. But Bhagavan repeatedly says about renunciation of the fruits of actions. So, as he says that why he is speaking this again to Arjuna, as we just discussed, the chain of disciplic succession was broken and the knowledge was lost. So, therefore, he is telling this to Arjuna again. Now, as we say that who could be the possible recipient of this knowledge? So definitely he has to have the ability to understand this transcendental mystery. Now, who can follow the instruction of the Lord? To understand something, to get the knowledge, one must have to be with faith and devotion and without envy, as we studied in the previous chapter also, that is Shraddhavantaha Anasuyantaha. Shraddhavantaha means with faith and devotion, and Anasuyantaha means without envy. So these are the very important qualities of a person who can receive this transcendental knowledge. And that is why Bhagavan saying, Bhaktosi me sakha cheti. That is, you are my bhakta, my devotee, as well as my best friend. Sakha. So sakha means he is definitely without envy, and bhakta means he is definitely having faith and devotion. So therefore we see these requirements are fulfilled. In this material world also we see any kind of selection is done on the basis of quality. So selection is always based on qualities. So as Arjuna is a friend and a devotee, so definitely the natural surrender is there from his side. Though we see Bhagavan never demanded obedience, he asked for contemplation followed by reasonable decision making. We see in Bhagavad Gita at the end, in chapter 18, verse number 63, when after saying everything, Bhagavan is saying, Yatha ichhasi tatha kuru. Arjuna, I don't want your obedience. You contemplate whatever you have heard and then decide applying your own reasons. Now we see the beauty of surrendering is actually sacrificing one's own ego at the altar of the Lord or at the feet of the Lord. And it actually means remaining unified with the Lord always. And who surrenders completely to the Lord, he becomes the instrument of the Lord. And Bhagavan then acts through that instrument and he gives the best award. The best award that he accepts that person. What better award can there be? If the Lord accepts us, then that is the highest reward and highest gift that we can imagine. So we see this is the nature, the need, nature and recipient of this transcendental knowledge. So the next few verses we have to study together. So we will end our session here today. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,